The most mysterious thing about David Allan Coe was never the rhinestone suit, never the mask, never the hearse parked outside the Grand Ole Opry or the Outlaws Motorcycle Club colors, or the stories about death row that turned out to be mythology rather than fact. The most mysterious thing about David Allan Coe was this: how a man who gave so much of himself to the music, who poured his whole broken, complicated, brilliant life into 42 studio albums and hundreds of songs, kept so much of himself completely hidden from the people who loved him most. David Allan Coe died on April 29, 2026. He was 86 years old, and in the days since, as the memorial tributes pour in from across the country music world, what his friends and fans and family are reflecting on is not just the songs. It is the mystery, the specific, permanent, irreducible mystery of a man who was completely himself on stage and almost completely unreachable everywhere else. His wife said it first and said it best. She called him her husband, her friend, her confidant, and her life for many years. She said he was one of the best singers, songwriters, and performers of their time, and she said she will never forget him and does not want anyone else to forget him either. That is the tribute of a woman who knew the private man, the one who existed behind the mask, literally, in his early years, when he wore a Lone Ranger mask on stage as the mysterious rhinestone cowboy, and who was always more complicated than any single headline could hold. And his son Tyler, in his own tribute, said something that cuts to the heart of the mystery. He said he does not hate the choices his father made for the final decade of his life. And then he said, anyone who knows anything about that man knows how useless it would be to try to get him to make different choices. If that were possible, his career would have gone way differently, and his legacy would probably be a lot better. A son who loved his father, and who understood with the clear eyes of someone who grew up inside the legend, that the mystery and the greatness came from exactly the same source. You could not have had the songs without the choices. You could not have had the outlaw without the walls. Younger country artists, many of whom are currently pushing the genre in bold new directions, credited Coe with proving that raw storytelling always has a place in country music. One of the most powerful tributes came from a stage in Australia. On the same night, the news broke in a completely different hemisphere, in front of a crowd that was already on their feet. A current country artist stopped mid-set to honor him. He praised David Allan Coe for not giving a damn about anything or anyone who said anything about anything. And then he played one of the bigger songs he had right there, on the spot, in Australia. Because when someone like that dies, you do not wait for a formal memorial service to say something. That is the reach of a mysterious man who never chased global fame. His music arrived in Australia anyway, because truth travels without a passport. Fans across platforms shared memories of live concerts, late-night playlists, and the exact lyric that first made them stop and feel something. Many said "You Never Even Called Me by My Name" was their introduction to him. Others pointed to The Ride as the song they will never skip. One fan wrote, "I was blessed enough to see him about 12 years ago. Even then he was old and tired, had to be helped on stage, spent most of the set sitting on a stool. Even so, his voice sounded as great as ever. Still have the videos on my phone." That is David Allan Coe, helped onto the stage, sitting on a stool, still sounding as great as ever. Because the voice, the actual instrument, the thing that turned his words into something that reached inside people, never failed him, even when everything else did. His legacy is mixed and mysterious. He was to some extent his own worst enemy. But whatever else is true, he could certainly write and sing a song as good as anyone. Mixed and mysterious, his own worst enemy, and still as good as anyone when it came to the writing and the singing. That is the memorial his friends are sitting with. The complete, contradictory, irreducible truth of a man who lived exactly the way he chose to live, and left behind 42 albums and a mystery that country music will spend the next 50 years trying to solve. A posthumous album is expected to be released on September 6, 2026. What would have been his 87th birthday? One last record on his birthday, because even in death, the mystery continues. Rest in peace, David Allan Coe. September 6, 1939, April 29, 2026. Thank you for watching.